Warren Buffett is sitting on over $334 billion in cash.
You can't base your life based on what he's thinking of it. Plus, Berkshire's returns in the last 10 years are not as big as you think they are.
If I was to go to my family and say gold खरीदते gold में invest करते हैं, get yourself some earrings, get yourself a bangle, ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा एक gold coin ले लो.
There's a 10% difference between the price of gold and what you can get for your gold, physical.
I know people who are in their 20s who are like 10 साल में retire के छुट्टी.
You know, most people when they retire, they end up being most vulnerable to heart attacks.
आज के गेस्ट को किसी इंट्रोडक्शन की ज़रूरत नहीं है. अगर आप फाइनेंशियल स्पेस में हैं और आप न्यूज़, पॉडकास्ट या सोशल मीडिया पे हैं, देयर इज़ नो वे यू हैवंट हर्ड ऑफ दिस पर्सन. वी हैव विद अस मिस्टर दीपक शेनॉय, हु इज CEO एंड फाउंडर ऑफ कैपिटल माइंड्स. Hi sir, how are you?
Very well, thank you Shagun, and thanks for that lovely introduction.
I'm really excited for this conversation, mostly because मैं बहुत relate करने वाली हूँ. So Peter Lynch, who is literally a god for so many investors, he has a very popular saying that invest in what you know, which is all good because it makes sense. You, on the other hand, have often said that asset allocation is more important than picking the right stock. Are these two things on the same page? And if yes, then what is the importance of both picking the right stocks and asset allocation and their importance to long-term wealth creation? And how do you even go about this?
मेरा जो सबसे ज़्यादा पैसा है on my net worth, it is in my own company. I'm 90 probably percent invested. I mean, if you consider my net worth perspective and all that, why is that? Because I can control the future of this company. ये जो company है आगे जाके अगर कुछ करेगी उसमें मेरा इनपुट है उसमें और मैं कंट्रोल कर सकता हूँ उसको. लेकिन आप जब किसी और की कंपनी खरीदते हो आपके पास वो नहीं है, आप बस पब्लिक पे जा रहे हो, जो न्यूज़ है, व्यूज़ है एंड ऑल दैट. तो इसलिए आपको डाइवर्सिफाई करना पड़ रहा है क्योंकि आपको पता नहीं है कि कौन सी कंपनी जो बोल रही है वो करेगी कि नहीं. शायद उसमें कोई गवर्नमेंट रूल आ जाए जिसमें मतलब जो आपने सोचा था वो नहीं होगा, एंड यू कैन नॉट कोर्स करेक्ट एट दैट टाइम. सो व्हाट यू डू इज़ यू इन्वेस्ट इन मल्टीपल कंपनीज. दिस इज़ द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ डाइवर्सिफिकेशन. तो मैं यही बोलता हूँ कि जब आपको ये नहीं पता है कि कौन सी कंपनी ही सक्सीड होगी, देन डाइवर्सिफाई अक्रॉस एसेट्स. सो यू जस्ट गो अक्रॉस की इक्विटी शायद ना करे अच्छा, या फिर उतना अच्छा ना करे जिसमें आपने किया. तो इक्विटी में आप बोलोगे कि इंडियन थोड़ा सा लो, इंटरनेशनल थोड़ा सा लो, मिड कैप, स्मॉल कैप, लार्ज कैप. अब मेरा जार्गन आने लग गया. तो उसके बाद बॉन्ड मार्केट में आप डेट मार्केट में कोई डेट वाले फंड्स लो, आप आर्बिट्राज लो जिसमें आप ये करोगे, आप थोड़े से गोल्ड वाले बॉन्ड्स या फिर गोल्ड वाला जो ETF है उसको खरीदो. तो ये जो चीज़ें हम बोल रहे हैं एक्चुअली लाइक अ लैंडस्केप दैट सेज देखो आपका एक्सपर्टीज इसमें नहीं है. तो इन्वेस्ट इन व्हाट यू नो इज ग्रेट इफ यू नो इनफ. पीटर लिंच हिमसेल्फ हैड 1000 कंपनीज.
Wow.
1000 companies in what was the Magellan Fund, which was the largest fund at that time, Fidelity ka. He inherited this company from a guy called Jerry Tsai, who was even better than Peter Lynch in terms of performance.
Okay.
And then he took it for nearly 30 years, 20 years, 69, 72 to 92, okay, 20 years. So 20 years he did a really fantastic job with that, and it went through ups and downs, but he did a magnificent job. But he had 1000 companies, and he said, I'll buy everything. So the guy who told you to buy what you know probably bought what he didn't know, and it was fine because the money is made in asset allocation. 20 or 30 companies out of those 1000 were 80% of that portfolio. 980 companies were only a tiny portion of the portfolio because he said, I know these companies, I'm going to buy. So you can buy a lot of stuff, but add money to what you know or add money to what's succeeding. So you're buying large cap, mid cap, small cap, something. जो अच्छा कर रहा है उस पर और पैसे डालो, जो अच्छा नहीं कर रहा है उसको रहने दो. एंड एसेट एलोकेट टू अ पॉइंट वेयर यू आर सेइंग कि देखो रिस्क में मुझे 50% ही चाहिए, नॉन रिस्क में मुझे 50% चाहिए. रिस्क वाला अगर 60% हो गया उसको कम करके, या फिर उसको कम करूँगी, या फिर उसको what I will do is I will incrementally add more money to the non-risky things so that 60 slowly whittles down to 50 over a period of time. I can do this every month. It's a very simple thing. Money's only objective is to be spent.
Yeah.
Right? So either you spend it now, called spending, and or you spend it later, which is called investing, saving, जो भी है. तो आपको जो करना है वो basically it is not to invest. It's basically हाँ जो है वो है, but my real pleasure, work, everything is something else. I have friends, I have family, I have things to do, places to go. At some level, bring down the amount of activity that you need to do So diversify enough so you don't have to worry about, अच्छा एक कंपनी है इसका ऑर्डर छूट जाता है तो यार क्या फ़र्क पड़ता है, because I have 40 other companies, I have 20 other, I have money in my gold and this and that, ये नीचे चला गया तो ठीक है, वो that thing is going up, so I'm still fine. This requires zen, मतलब थोड़ा सा
शांति
वो नहीं होता है लोगों में, but ये usually this is like the बुढ़ा अंकल telling you शांति रखो ठीक है, but it's the thing that you will eventually come to anyway, because and मेरे बोलने से कुछ नहीं होगा, आप इसी के थ्रू जाओगे, you will learn the hard way and then you will come and the next generation you will tell कि देखो यही है. That's the unfortunate story of our lives.
The cycle never ends.
The cycle never ends.
And it's so funny because so many people that I've interviewed with always said the same thing: make investing boring. And everyone said to me, you will not believe, every person that I talked to has said the same thing to me: make your investment journey boring. And I mean, the crux of what you said is exactly the same. वो activity कम करो and just like relax and chill out. Is basically what
you're
investors.
young. I mean, when you're young, you're supposed to go and travel and see places and meet people and have fun and all that stuff. Like Maggie noodles खा रहे हो क्यों कर रहे हो यार, ये मतलब there was a time I had to survive on Maggie noodles because I didn't have any money. I was a kid in college doing my thing, but I don't want those days again. I mean, not to save money.
People really do need to chill out, man. I think that is the crux of it all. We really need to chill out when it comes to investments. Okay, so we noticed something in emerging markets around the world. For the last 24 years, gold has outperformed equities, which is all good. However, that's not the case in India. So, of course, we'll delve into why that is and your perspective on this. But I have like this tiny little notion on this, and it's that I think we as Indians and a lot of South Asian countries are so culturally and emotionally attached to physical gold. And if I was to go to my family and say, gold kharite, gold mein invest karte, they'd be like, theek hai, like get yourself some earrings, get yourself a bangle, or zyada se zyada ek gold coin le lo, that's your investment. So it's really not considered a serious investment avenue, right? So do you think that this bias or like this feeling about gold really limits how we exploit gold as an investment avenue, and what's your perspective on this?
Very interesting, because as an investment, gold and as jewelry, there are two different aspects. So my point about gold is generally that times like this, when you have a spike in the price of gold, आपको लगता है कि यार gold होना चाहिए. But gold is stability. From an element perspective, you shouldn't worry about the price so much. It is more like something that is likely to kind of give you inflation level returns without the taxation of inflation, because you're holding it for a long time and all that. But I think there are multiple reasons why it's complicated. One of the reasons is this: आप gold किसी चीज़ को खरीदते हो, जैसे gold bangle है. You're thinking कि times of distress the price of gold will go up, I will go be able to sell. दो चीज़ें आपको पता लगती है. एक तो आपको जो बताया गया था 95 गोल्ड और 995 गोल्ड और 999 गोल्ड, वो एक्चुअली है नहीं, क्योंकि जब आप इसको मेल्ट करते हो कि मतलब आपको पता ही नहीं होगा आपको क्या पता होगा, और आपको ये भी नहीं पता कि जो मेल्ट करके आपको बोल रहा है वो भी सही है कि नहीं सही है, दैट यू डोंट नो. सो एट सम लेवल दैट इज़ अ प्रॉब्लम. एंड पीपल आर सेइंग कि नहीं आप इस दुकान में जाओ, वो तो मतलब हमेशा आपको, पर वो दुकान ही नहीं रहेगी 20 साल बाद फिर, और या फिर वो जो दुकान अपने पॉलिसीज़ को चेंज कर देगी अगर, तो देन that's another thing. The second one is they have making charges and something else. The buy price and the sell price are 5% away from each other. मैं आपको ये बोलूँ कि आप जो म्यूचुअल फंड है आप खरीदोगे तो आप 10,000 रुपये दोगे, लेकिन आप मेरे को बेचोगे उसी दिन में, आपको सिर्फ 9,500 रुपये मिलेंगे. You will cry a hissy fit saying, come on, excuse me, you can't do this. लेकिन गोल्ड में बिल्कुल अलाउड है. उसके बाद 9,500 रुपये पे और 3% मेकिंग चार्ज लगेगा और 4% कुछ और लगेगा. वेस्टेज का मतलब क्या होता है? आप क्या मतलब व्हाट डू यू डू विद दिस गोल्ड? इट डजंट फ्लाई इनटू द एयर. आप कहीं तो मतलब क्लोज रूम में रखते हो, बचाते हो, नहीं उसमें 2% लगा लिया. और जो ये चीज़ें हैं 2%, 5%, it is a 10% difference between the price of gold and what you can get for your gold physical.
Wow.
So that difference is, and it's more complicated. जैसे I went to a jeweler recently because we had some gold. I said, I want to sell it. And they said, ठीक है हम ले लेंगे, आप कोई भी ज्वेलरी ले लो. मैं कहा नहीं, ज्वेलरी नहीं लेना है, मेरे को पैसे चाहिए. Then they went into this hard बेच रहे हैं, एक्चुअली बेच के पैसे निकाल रहे हैं, क्यों? So then they, sir आपके पास का परचेज का रिसीट है? I said, no, this ring was like given to me when I was born, which is in a zamana where your whole khandan didn't exist at most probably, but come on, it was like, please. So they're like, no, we don't know if it is stolen, so we can't. सो मैंने कहा अभी तो आप ज्वेलरी के लिए एक्सचेंज करने के लिए तैयार थे, नहीं वो ठीक था, अभी आपको मतलब ये हो, एंड देन आई रियलाइज दिस इज अ प्रॉब्लम बिकॉज द वर्ल्ड डजंट लाइक इट इफ यू आर एक्चुअली ट्राइंग टू सेल गोल्ड टू गेट मनी आउट ऑफ इट. So what I have talked to some poorer people, they said we don't try to sell our gold, we go and borrow against it. तो मैं 100 रुपये का गोल्ड दूंगी अगर, तो मैं 80 रुपये का मुझे लोन मिलेगा, 80% लोन टू वैल्यू. आई टेक दैट 80, देन इफ आई कांट पे बैक आई डिफॉल्ट ऑन द लोन. दैट इज इक्वल टू सेलिंग द गोल्ड. बट आपने 20% दे दिए, 10% तो आपके वैसे ही जाने थे क्योंकि आपका मेकिंग चार्ज ये वो, लेकिन आपने और 10% दे के लोन लेके आपने डिफॉल्ट कर. यू आर इफेक्टिवली सेलिंग द गोल्ड बिकॉज उन लोगों, वो जो लोग हैं वो कुछ करेंगे, जो भी है वो बेच देंगे, एंड यू आर फाइन बिकॉज एक्चुअली इट्स अ गुड वे टू सेल द गोल्ड. ओनली प्रॉब्लम आपका सिविल स्कोर खराब हो जाता है, बट फॉर देम इट डजंट मैटर व्हाट देयर सिविल स्कोर इज. बट द इंटरेस्टिंग थिंग अबाउट दिस इज दिस, आप इस चीज़ को सोच रहे थे कि ये अच्छा इन्वेस्टमेंट है, एंड आपने फिजिकल गोल्ड खरीदा. Then you have the theft issue, then you have the storage issue, then all sorts of things.
Too many logistics involved.
Then you shift away from physical gold and say I will buy gold bonds. Now you cannot wear gold bonds. So you have a problem. So now you say physical gold भी होना चाहिए, gold bond भी होना चाहिए. तो मैं कहता हूँ एक चीज़ है, आप divide into two things. One is the spending and the enjoyment of it, and one is the investing. तो इन्वेस्टिंग के लिए बाय द गोल्ड बॉन्ड्स और गोल्ड वॉट एवर एंड ऑल दैट स्टफ, एंड फॉर द स्पेंडिंग बाय द ज्वेलरी एज इफ दैट मनी इज़ वर्थ ज़ीरो. जैसे आपने पोर्शा खरीद लिया, जो भी है, एंड यू हैव बॉट दिस कार. You have not bought it because you can sell it at a higher price. You have bought it because you want to drive it, not in Indian roads, but wherever you want to drive it. So the idea is you bought it for the pleasure of owning it, not because it can be resold.
Harry Markowitz is a really renowned economist. He has a theory that if you diversify your investment globally, then you reduce your risk and all of that stuff, which I mean, again, it's a very established fact. But we've seen for the last few years that dollars appreciated almost 40%, which is good. I mean, you would think that it's a great reason for you to invest. But on the flip side, with the rupee depreciating so much against the dollar, I mean, मेरे mind में naturally एक question आएगा कि is it even worth investing इतना ज़्यादा पैसा मैं US markets में लगा रही हूँ. So first, I want to know your thought on that. And secondly, how do you even go about investing in markets abroad?
Brilliant. Okay. पहले मैं आपको एक question पूछ लेता हूँ. 5 साल पहले, विच इज़ 28 मार्च 2020 से आज तक, आपको कितना, अगर आपने जस्ट ऑन द फेस ऑफ इट, हाउ मच डू यू थिंक द रुपी हैज़ डिप्रिशिएट, मतलब कितना गिरा है इन परसेंटेज टर्म्स? 5 years.
5 years. I mean, I don't want to. I mean, I have no
total. Just give me a rough idea.
I'm just gonna say 12%, like a very ballpark figure.
Per year?
Per year. No. In the past 5 years.
So 12% in 5 years. So आपको मिल रहे हैं rupee depreciation of less than 2%, maybe 2% a year, 2%. That is not reason enough कि आप कहीं और जाओ. मतलब 2% तो इंडिया में ही निकल आएंगे अगर आप. The bigger thing that you should think about is the fact that there are a lot of new things that are coming. ये जो AI है, इंडिया का कुछ नहीं हो रहा है. AI यूज़ करने जा रहे हैं हम लोग, उस पर रील्स बना रहे हैं, पर उसमें मतलब एक्चुअल जो ये है वो इंडियन लिस्टेड कंपनी से तो नहीं आ रहा है. इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल्स की सारी जो टेक्नोलॉजी या तो चाइना में बन रही है, अमेरिका में बन रही है, या यूरोप में बन रही है. हम कुछ नहीं कर रहे हैं. कल को अगर आप एक नया प्रोडक्ट आया हुआ है Ozempic, which is supposed to be for losing weight and fantastic and all that. Ozempic is manufactured by Novo Nordisk, जो यूरोपियन है कंपनी. There are things and products we use and we like to use. Birkin bags, for instance, they're parts of companies that are not in India at all. So a lot of these things that we like, we use, we see progress in, ये इंडिया में नहीं है. तो इसीलिए आपको शायद to get to access to these companies is where you want to go abroad. एंड उसको आप चाहे US मार्केट्स में कर सकते हो या आप चाइनीज़ मार्केट्स में कर सकते हो, आप किसी भी. एंड इंडिया में देयर इज़ अ रूल दैट $250,000 they can invest abroad per year, which is about 2 crores per year. For most people it is okay. Only problem is complicated. So complicated का मीनिंग क्या है कि आप अगर किसी चीज़ में इन्वेस्ट करते हो तो इंडिया में तो बहुत सिंपल है, आप वो आधार वाला OTP दे दो, हो गया है ना, 500 रुपये दे दिया जो भी है, एंड यू स्टार्ट. इट्स नॉट एज ईजी मोस्ट फॉर द मोस्ट पार्ट इन फॉरेन थिंग, क्योंकि वो कहते हैं आधार नहीं चलेगा, ये चलेगा, आपको ये देना पड़ेगा वो, एंड सो ऑल दैट स्टफ. बट मेनी पीपल हैव स्टार्टेड टू मेक इट वेरी इजी नाउ, इंक्लूडिंग कंपनीज लाइक INDmoney एंड फ्यू अदर कंपनीज. अब ये भी चीज़ है कि ये इन्वेस्ट इन वॉट यू नो, to bring Peter Lynch into Harry Markowitz, and make that this thing. The idea is that you don't know much about the Indian companies in the first place. Lekin aap, what will you know about the foreign companies? It's much more difficult to get that information. And American markets start trading at 7:30 in the night, and then go on till like 3 or 2:30 in the morning.
3:30 a.m.
Also, transferring the money has a cost. सो यूजली इंडियन बैंक्स विल टेक एटलीस्ट 1-1.5%. उसके ऊपर जब आप पैसे वापस लेके आओगे और एक 1.5%, तो 3% वहीं चले गए. आपका जो रुपी डिप्रिसिएशन था गया. सो एज इन फॉर 1 year, इफ यू टेक योर मनी एंड ब्रिंग इट बैक इन द सेम ईयर, 1 year ऑफ रुपी डिप्रिसिएशन इज गॉन. द सेकेंड थिंग इज ऑल्सो दैट द कॉस्ट्स अब्रॉड आर मच हायर. इंडिया में दे से देर इज zero cost or 20 rupees per order or something like that. America, it's something like, listen, if you don't trade in interactive brokers, if you don't trade for like I think 6 months, they charge you a fee anyway. In other cases, it will be like the minimum order value should be at least $2,000. $2,000, 1.5 lakh rupees. We can do 5,000 rupee SIP in India. वहाँ आप 1.5 लाख रुपए का SIP तो नहीं कर पाओगे for the most part. So what will happen is that you'll have to do this on a concentrated basis. मैं 1 लाख इकट्ठा करूँगी और फिर इन्वेस्ट करूँगी. वो ठीक है, लेकिन आपने उससे कम किया अगर, तो आपके जो फिक्स्ड कॉस्ट हैं उतने ज़्यादा हो जाते हैं, देन यू लूज सो मच इन टर्म्स ऑफ द रिटर्न्स. सो इट सडनली स्टार्ट्स टू बिकम मोर एक्सेसिबल टू पीपल हु आर नॉट इन. द बेस्ट वे वुड हैव बीन टू बाय म्यूचुअल फंड, जो 2 साल पहले तक आप खरीद सकते थे. देयर वाज अ ETF और अ म्यूचुअल फंड टू इन्वेस्ट इन NASDAQ, S&P, few other companies, and also in the Chinese market, in the Brazilian market, all sorts of things. ये आप खरीद सकते थे पहले. अब एक लिमिट है $7 billion या $8 billion जो भी है. वो लिमिट म्यूचुअल फंड इंडस्ट्री का लिमिट है, मतलब सारे म्यूचुअल फंड्स मिला के उतना ही खरीद सकते हैं. तो लिमिट हिट हो गया 2022 में. उसके बाद से RBI सेड नो मोर म्यूचुअल फंड्स इन इंडिया इन्वेस्टिंग अब्रॉड. आप खुद कर सकते हो अपने पैसे से, आप खुद ब्रोकर, मतलब हम किसी और ब्रोकर को पैसा बनाने दे रहे हैं, हम अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स को नहीं बनाने दे रहे.
So I mean, you can buy a US stock, but you can't invest like in.
In an Indian mutual fund that buys a US stock.
Okay.
Because the Indian mutual fund can reduce its costs by combining the money and saying, देखो, I'll invest 5 crores. So give me a better cost structure. आप अपने 20,000 से आप कोई negotiate नहीं कर सकते. तो ये जो चीज़ें हैं जो RBI ने अलाउ नहीं करी हैं, उसकी वजह से आपके पास वो जो ऑप्शन था, जो म्यूचुअल फंड का ऑप्शन था, वो चला गया है अभी के लिए. लेकिन शायद आ जाए. और वैसे डिस्क्लोजर हमने म्यूचुअल फंड के लाइसेंस का भी अप्लाई किया है, तो दैट वे आई एम एक्चुअली बेनिफिटिंग इफ, सो आई एम जस्ट डिस्क्लोजिंग कि मेरा भी बेनिफिट है अगर ये लिमिट ओपन हो जाए. बट इस लिमिट के ओपनिंग से सिर्फ मेरा नहीं, आई थिंक सबका फ़ायदा है, क्योंकि आपका कॉस्ट भी कम है इन्वेस्ट करने के बाद. आप छोटे अमाउंट्स भी इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हो, और आप SIP भी कर सकते हो, जो आपको फॉरेन ब्रोकर्स में आई मीन एज इजीली नहीं अलाउड है. बट दिस आर गुड मैकेनिज्म, और आपको इसीलिए करना चाहिए क्योंकि वहाँ पे इनोवेशन है, वहाँ पे ऐसी प्रोडक्ट्स हैं जो आप यहाँ पे शायद ईजिली एक्सेस नहीं कर सकते, या फिर इंडियन कोई इक्विवेलेंट नहीं है, और आप बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग से प्रोडक्ट्स खरीद सकते हो, समटाइम्स वेरी चीप ऑल्सो कम्पेयर टू इंडिया. इंडिया में क्या है कि कुछ कंपनीज जो अच्छी कंपनीज हैं वो इतनी एक्सपेंसिव हैं कि आपको लगता है कि देखो, I am buying a good Maruti car, but I am paying a Mercedes wala price, right? Then you might as well buy the Mercedes car at the Maruti wala price sometimes. So that is available abroad. तो आपके opportunities worldwide हो जाते हैं. इसलिए आपको करना चाहिए, पर आपको like जब आप when you are at young and you have less capital, आप ज़्यादा मत सोचो इसके बारे में. If it is a mutual fund, buy it. When you get rich, when you go past the 25-30 lakh barrier, that time you should think.
And what should be the step one when you're investing in, abroad markets?
So एक चीज़ है कि जिस तरह से इंडिया में इंडेक्स फंड्स हुआ हैं, जैसे निफ्टी इंडेक्स फंड हुआ या फिर सेंसेक्स इंडेक्स फंड हुआ, इस तरह से there's a NASDAQ 100 fund in the US which is technology based, और S&P 500 which is the US market, broadly US large cap market, and then there are world markets also, world market funds also. So ये जो आप फंड हैं, पहले आप इसमें एक्सपोजर ले सकते हो, क्योंकि इसमें किसी कंपनी के जानने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. इट्स लाइक यू आर बेटिंग ऑन द होल मार्केट, सो यू कैन स्टार्ट विद दैट. then you can go to specifics. Novo Nordisk खरीदना क्योंकि weight loss का drug है ये वो, and that then becomes a next step saying कि जब मैंने अपने index funds खरीद के मतलब broad market को analyze कर लिया उसके ऊपर then I can go into the next step which is the simpler things like individual stocks and all that.
Got it.
And then later I can expand into other exotic products जैसे वहाँ पे कोई structured product होगा या फिर आपने उस कंपनी को खरीदनी जो अभी लिस्ट ही नहीं हुई है. ये इस तरह के भी ऑफर्स आते हैं अनलिस्टेड. ओपन एआई बहुत अच्छा काम कर रही है. कैन आई बाय देयर शेयर्स. कोई कह रहा है आपको केमन आइलैंड में एक प्रोजेक्ट है जिसमें आपने अगर 50 लाख रुपए डाले तो आपको ओपन एआई के शेयर मिलेंगे, लेकिन आपको नहीं मिलेंगे, आपको एक इस ट्रस्ट की यूनिट्स मिलेंगे. वो ट्रस्ट विल ओन अबाउट $50 million ऑफ ओपन एआई. तो ये जो एग्जॉटिक प्रोडक्ट्स हैं ये भी आएंगे आपके पास. आई थिंक दैट विल कम, दैट मेक सेंस व्हेन यू आर रिचर because these products have risk also disclosure issues क्योंकि वो कहते एक चीज़ें और करते एक और चीज़ें. So you know the risk, the fraud risk is also very high. So I think best to go into a regulated product first, go buy a ETF which is broad market, then get into stocks and then get into exotics.
So there are some numbers that say that Warren Buffett is sitting on over $334 billion in cash right now, which is an insane amount of money. And they say that he's just waiting for the right time in the market. Okay, considering that this Warren Buffett, like the Warren Buffett, who is the craziest investor ever, and he's waiting. So I just want to know your perspective on this. Retail investors and normal people like us who are in the market, what should they be doing? Should they be, getting more cash, hold more cash, and just wait for that opportunity that he's waiting for? Or should we have our own strategies and start deploying? So when people like him are waiting, what should we even do?
Oh, this is a very, very good question because I will ask you this. If you had 1,000 crores today, what would you do with it?
I mean...
It's 1,000 crores. I am telling you, you have it today. क्या करोगे आप? It's...
Yeah.
We don't even know the number of zeros.
I can't even fathom
yes,
first of
exactly.
all.
I know exactly.
So much.
Think of it, okay?
Yeah.
आपने अगर उस पैसे को FD में डाला, मैं मजाक नहीं कर रहा हूँ, I'm just telling you, FD में आपके 8% आए, 80 करोड़ आएंगे. 80 करोड़ आएंगे.
अच्छा तो
80 करोड़ साल के आ रहे हैं, तो महीने के इतने आएंगे, रफली 6.5 करोड़. तो दिन के 20 लाख रुपए आपके अकाउंट में FD में इंक्रीज हो रहे हैं. ठीक है, आप क्या करोगे? आप
The middle class person in me would be like FD करके छोड़ दो उसको.
अब यही चीज़ आप समझो कि वो उसके पास इतने ज़्यादा पैसे, उसको नहीं पता है क्या करना है, और उसको मतलब ही इज़ 90x years old, right? And he does like, dude, what the hell? I'm not going to invest all this stuff in something and just change and go wrecking ball across this thing. I can't invest this money meaningfully. क्या खरीदोगे आप 300 बिलियन लेके? मतलब बहुत कम चीज़ें हैं जो आपको, नहीं तो आपको सब कुछ खरीदना पड़ेगा, और वो नहीं करना चाहते हो आप, तो आप FD में रखोगे. बोलो 5% आ रहा है US में, आगे शॉर्ट टर्म FD में कमा लो उसमें जितना कमाना है, तो ठीक है. उसका प्रॉब्लम है, तुम्हारे पास तो नहीं है 300 बिलियन, आपके पास आप 1,000 करोड़ में, विच इज़ लेस देन $200 million, $120 million. आप उसी में कह रहे हो कि लाइफ इज़ गुड, आई एम डन विद एन FD, राइट? सो बेचारा मतलब he eats a burger and Diet Coke or whatever, something every day, right? So he doesn't have that kind. So you can't base your life based on what he's thinking of doing. Plus Berkshire's returns in the last 10 years are not as big as you think they are. He made a lot of money till the 90s and maybe 2000s, and since then he didn't participate in the tech rally. He doesn't own any of these Nvidias and all that stuff. He bought Apple reluctantly in 2017 and then sold it later. He made some money on that, undoubtedly, but Apple was a position he could buy because it was the largest company in the world and he could put his billions of dollars to work. But now there are very few companies that he can actually meaningfully put his money in, other than buying everything. Issue then becomes, his problem is a problem of plenty. Your problem is you want to grow your money, and you may find companies at your size which make a meaningful impact to you. मैंने अगर ये 5 लाख का खरीदा, तो ये 5 लाख का 10 लाख हो सकता है क्योंकि in the next 5 or 6 years, because I have bought the right set of companies. So it makes sense for you to deploy your money, but not for him.
Could you tell us a little bit about what strategies you've used, in your experience, to deliver these above average returns in the market?
Great question. I think, Shagun, this is where I'm going to be like a little bit on the advertising part of things. But here's what we believe. Okay, there's two things. One is that data tells you a lot. So using data and using quantitative methods ki jisme aap company ko analyze karega, you look at its actual numbers and analyze it. You can use price data, performance and all that. So there's a way you divide the world into factors, and one of the investing world is कि आपका return कहाँ से आ रहा है. या तो कंपनी अपना profits grow कर रही है, so it's called profitability. या फिर अपने revenues grow कर रही है, maybe it's called growth. Then it's giving higher return on equity. It's called quality. So these are ways you can divide कि return कहाँ से आया है. One of the ways that you can determine returns is something called momentum. Momentum is a factor that says all the other factors are the same, but when the price goes up by itself, that is price momentum. And price momentum in India has been one of the largest determinators of returns in comparison with all the other factors. So we've got a portfolio that we call momentum. Though we are constantly analyzing all the factors, we are looking at momentum as has been one of the leading factors of returns. It makes a lot of sense to buy stocks that are going up, regardless of what they are doing, because you don't know, and eventually you get to know the price has already gone up too much. So we buy stocks. We have an algorithm that buys these stocks, and we've been running it for now nearly 6 years, with around 20% annualized returns over the last 6 years. Fairly good returns. Started in 2019. Then we have something called Surge India, which is another portfolio. Both are in the PMS. We are in Surge India, we simply buy stocks that are focused on building for India. Okay. So it could be a bunch of areas. One is Indian manufacturing / defense / railways. So we started picking these stocks up 3 years ago, and we said these will really grow as areas. Another one is financialization. जैसे आप बोल रहे हो कि SIP ज़्यादा हो रहे हैं, ये हो रहे हैं, and the reason for that is because India is saving more and more, and that saving more and more is not going to gold or real estate. It is going towards SIPs, financial instruments, mutual funds, insurance by these companies. Then Indian infrastructure itself, which of course हमारे roads तो है नहीं. वैसे दिल्ली में तो ठीक है, but in Bangalore we don't have any roads. But by and large they're trying to fix the problem. So India is building more physical infrastructure as well. And then you have another area which I think we all seem to be talking about and doing. We're talking these Birkin bags. But we're also buying Indian products. We're doing Swiggies and the Zomatos and all of that stuff that's happening. Although we don't necessarily own these companies, and I won't I've used them for explanation more than anything else. But we have them as a domestic consumption component. Have companies like companies that actually create or benefit from Indian consumption. So we have these mini themes inside of our Surge India philosophy, and we buy these companies, hold them for a few years and wait for them to grow. So we had some companies that have grown up 15x, 16x in the last 4 or 5 years. The return on this portfolio is about 19%, 18.5, 19% a year in the last 5 or 6 years. I think these two portfolios have done really well in comparison with even the market, and we've kept it fairly simple. Our PMS has a relatively low fee. We don't charge a profit share, so सारे profits are of our customers, and I am invested in it as much as I could. And and now we've also applied to become a mutual fund, so hopefully we'll be able to carry on these things in the mutual fund as well.
There is so much learning, when it comes to just like how you've generated these returns. And I'm sure, not every investor can actually practically use this for their own portfolio, but there's something to learn from everything. Okay, so I'll tell you, I'm a Gen Z, I'm 23. मैं और मेरे सारे peers, हम लोग का एक common notion है, passion driven कह लो, we just like flexibility, we want to do things our own way, and everyone wants to do jobs that they want. The other flip side of this is, there are some numbers that suggest that 51% Gen Zs are living paycheck to paycheck. So we have these two perspectives, jahan pe one side is really excited and passion driven, and on the other side we see the consequences of it in terms of our careers. So what is your perspective on this? How do we even begin the process of wealth building?
क्वेश्चन बड़ा अच्छा है, क्योंकि ये सिर्फ जेन जी में नहीं आता. हर जनरेशन यही समझता है कि हमारे साथ ही हुआ है. क्योंकि मैंने जब करियर स्टार्ट किया था, मेरा था आई हैड ओनली 4,500 रुपीज़ पर मंथ एज अ सैलरी, and I was living at home. Otherwise this rent would have taken out nearly half or 3/4 of my income. तब टैक्स तो हुआ नहीं करता, मतलब 4,500 पे क्या ही टैक्स लोगे. But that was the thing, and you struggled through the first few years of your life. I think ये जो चीज़ें आप बता रहे हो, I think it is common across everything, and everybody lives through it. I want to do what I love. It's slightly different from I want to love what I do. because no matter what you do there will be aspects of it that you don't love. मतलब आप जो भी काम करोगे उसमें एक कुछ होगा कि उसमें एक फॉर्म फिलिंग हो जाएगा या फिर रिपोर्ट बनाना पड़ेगा, and that's a boring part of everything, and that part will always remain. So you can let that take over your life, or you can let the other part which is fun.
Yeah.
I think you should find fun and meaning in what you do, and of course don't do something that is like, अगर मेरे को सीमेंट बैग उठाने हैं तो मतलब क्या ही मतलब उससे प्यार करूँगा. एट सम लेवल आई मे ओनली बी द जिम गोइंग गाय एंड फाइनेंशियली इनसिक्योर का यूजली ये मीनिंग होता है कि दो चीज़ें हैं, या तो आपके पास पैसे ही नहीं है बिल्कुल, मतलब घर चलाने के लिए जो भी है एंड ऑल दैट. दूसरा ये है कि आपके दोस्तों ने जो बोला, आपने सोशल मीडिया में जो देखा, आपको वो चीज़ें करनी है और उसके लिए आपके पास पैसे नहीं है. या फिर आपको बर्किन का बैग खरीदना है क्योंकि आपके दोस्तों ने बर्किन का बैग खरीदा, अब वो आपको मिल नहीं रहा है, और आपने अगर फेक बर्किन का बैग खरीदा then it be a problem and you have to act. So your problems are क्या कहते हैं, मन में है problems. तो वो but वो सच्ची हैं, in the end it's the neighbor वाला problem, but you have to find that there's a difference between having a problem because your neighbor has something and having a problem because you don't have something. If you differentiate this, ये तो ज्ञान, मैं सिर्फ ज्ञानबाजी दे रहा हूँ because in the end pain is real, आपको ही होगा. But I think you have to have a little bit of, मतलब ये ambition ही है, इसी से ड्राइव होता है. अगर आपके पास सब कुछ होता तो आपको काम करने की ज़रूरत क्या थी? So you have to have that little bit of financial insecurity to say कि I have to get somewhere, I have to do something, and that will make me happy.
I mean, you need to get out of that comfort space to really, have a drive. So that makes sense. So retirement is really all over the internet right now. Everyone wants to retire early. I know people who are in their 20s who are like, हमें अगले 10 साल में retire के छुट्टी, अपना खत्म करो काम. So do you think like this is a trend, or is it like something that's bigger than just a trend, and this is going to last and really define this generation of people who are going to retire by the age of 30 or 40 and be like, now we're going to enjoy? And is this even possible?
So I think what I would do is invest in some kind of an emotional return business, because the problem is this, आप retire कर तो जाओगे, फिर करोगे क्या? You'll be 40, you'll be excited, you'll be willing to work, you want to be part of something, and there is nothing because you don't have a job and you don't want a job, and nobody wants to hire you because you don't want a job, or rather nobody wants to hire you because you're not looking for a job. क्या ही करोगे types, in the end you have to be part of something that provides meaning to your life. Ask the hundreds and thousands of women who have given up their careers to have babies. After 2 or 3 years, it is not that they don't want to work because they have been kind of forcefully retired. It's not that they have to work because most likely they've earned enough and their spouses are earning enough for them not to need to work at all. But there is this void and lack of meaning in their lives, right? And you're going to find this in yourself when you get to this point where you're 40 and you have enough money. And then the problem is, if you do things like live on Maggie and then you'll be 40 and then do what? I mean, because honestly, you're not going to suddenly start saying, oh, well, because you're now been so confused all your life that for you to say, I will go to, Denmark to eat in a restaurant which costs 38,000 rupees per meal. नहीं, कैसे कर सकते हैं? Because I'm retired, but I can't spend my money like this. I mean, that's the problem. In the end, you don't enjoy yourself. And you don't find purpose and meaning in your life, then you will just have an emotional breakdown at some point. Most people, when they retire, they end up being most vulnerable to heart attacks. That's not because and strokes, not because your body responds to the lack of ambition in your life at that point and responds badly. You have to ease it out. There's some people for whom retirement is easy because it's like this. I think everybody wants that. यही सोचते हैं कि बीच में बैठेंगे. आप बीच में बैठो तो 10 दिन बाद आप you'll be like, okay, I'm done. I can't do this. And we don't do this. I met Europeans. In Europe, a lot of places, they have a compulsory holiday. मतलब a compulsory holiday where the government will pay if you take 45 days off.
Wow.
Up to 45 days or 20 days off or something like that. So the government pays you your salary. जो भी आप salary कमा रहे हो, the government pays. So your employer says, अगर आप holiday नहीं लोगे तो मेरे को पैसा देना पड़ेगा. अगर आप holiday लोगे तो government आपको पैसा देगी. तो you please go. So they drive. They go somewhere. They take a flight. So they go and enjoy themselves. And I'm telling you, in 20 or 25 days, they're done. They're like, we did our, crazy stuff and we got drunk everywhere. We did this. And then they come back and then they work like crazy for the next 11 months, right? So if these are people for whom, there is no need for this fire because you can retire whenever you want, your government is actually going to pay you. They are not retiring. at some level.
True.
Then what makes us believe that we will? I think fundamentally we're all. I'm 50. I thought when I was 25, I used to think that 50 पे हो जाएगा यार. मतलब कोई ambition नहीं रहेगा, बाल नहीं रहेंगे, बाल में ambition भी है. So अब क्या करोगे? You can't base your life on that lie that you will not at some point give up. I think we are all built to not give up.
Things have changed, I think. When I saw my grandparents retire, I feel like we used to live in joint families. They had things to do around the house. They had something to look forward to. But at this point, the way that we are changing just how people and families live and exist, I feel like if you're living in a nuclear family, you're not going to have that to look forward to. I mean, of course, your passion and your drive, you're going to start feeling that it's not there anymore because things around you have changed and people live independently now.
In fact, I think that's one of the problems also, because you don't find things to do because everybody's doing their own thing.
Okay, so assume karte hain. I mean, my age is not an assumption, but like I just wanted to think of like a hypothetical, example that people can kind of relate to and then perhaps build a roadmap for themselves. So in this situation, let's assume that I'm a 22-year-old and I have a 30,000 enhanced salary. I live with my parents, so I save like a good chunk, 20,000 of it. Now, मेरे mind में there are two things. Okay, one is that invest now. अभी से SEP शुरू कर दो भाई. This is the time, right time to buy. All of that stuff that's going on the internet. And the second thing is that tells me that, you know what? Hold on. Invest in yourself right now. In your skill development and all of that stuff. In yourself basically. And then the other part tells me, relax. दोनों time से हो जाएंगे. आप अपना enjoy करो. Right. So there are a lot of things that are going on in my head. I just want to know, how do you prioritize all of these different
things?
Things, yeah.
There are two things. Buying things versus buying experiences. Okay. Buying education versus buying knowledge. These are all two different, these are four, or what are you trying to do in terms of growth? In the early parts of your life, and people will hate me for saying this, there is no thing like saving too early and too late and all that stuff. There is something like saving too early, but there is nothing like saving too late. You can put all the math equations as you want, but you cannot measure the power of enhancing yourself at a time when you are the most influenceable in your lives and careers, and you're broadening your horizons can change the way you look at the world in magnificent ways. I'm telling you this as an entrepreneur who started when he was 24. 24, yeah. I started when I was 24. My first company. The opening of horizons, people tell me even now, Deepak, I can't live without a monthly salary. And I have always, it's only now that I kind of get something monthly, but it's like I've always lived without a monthly salary for so much time, so I don't mind it at all. So they can't imagine jumping out of their jobs and doing things. But because I was able to do it earlier in my career, I think that is the kind of opening mind stuff that you should do, and that will help you. So I think your balancing act is this. At 30,000 a month, in about 10 years, you'll probably be earning 3 lakhs a month. And 3 lakhs a month is even nowadays what you'd pay a person who's that much in certain job roles. Yeah. So if you're getting 3 lakhs a month at that time, आप 20% अपना salary का save कर रहे हो, you're saving 2 months of today's full salary.
Yeah.
So today's 20% is not going to change your life, right? But it could change the way you think about it based on how you spend. You save that money, that's fine, invest in SIPs or whatever, but save up to 2 lakh rupees, take a European tour, take a Asian tour, go see other countries, see other places. Your eyes will open out. You might find opportunities there that you can do here. It will change. It will give you an education without you looking for an education. It will, although you're enjoying yourself, you're actually learning, because that's how we are. We learn all the time. So do that more than this thing, and little less of the social media stuff, because in social media you're supposed to just save,
invest, and save.
Invest and save. This is the social media bullying of all of us, right? And uncles like me telling people ki beta पहले से सेव करो आप ये, but we are the same uncles who will say शादी करो, बच्चे करो, बच्चों, all that, which is not applicable universally to everybody. I think this is bad advice, and I think the good advice is do expand your horizons when you're young. How you do it is yours. If you don't feel the need to expand your horizons, of course you'll save. But I think most people have ambitions. They want to travel, they want to meet people, they want to do things. As long as it's not buying stuff for the showing off part. Like for instance, if you save all this money and go buy a Birkin bag, that is not going to change anything in your life. Yeah. And you're not getting any experience out of it other than buying of that Birkin bag. it's great, but I don't think it enhances you as a person meaningfully.
On the internet, there are 3600 investment strategies, and everyone has a 5 investment strategies you should know, blah, blah, blah. So much going on. I just want to know, what do you think is a very underrated investment strategy or a habit perhaps that not a lot of people know about, but if they did, they would really be doing much better than they are right now?
Oh yeah, I think the most underrated strategy is simply, and while I've said all this stuff that I'm saying, let's say you've reached your 30s and you're starting to save and all that stuff, and people are most worried about returns. Like इंटरनेट पे ये इसमें ज़्यादा रिटर्न आता है, उसमें ज़्यादा रिटर्न आता है. मैं कहता हूँ ये चीज़ करो आप, just save a little more every year or every month. So if you're saving 100,000 rupees this month, next month save 1,100. No, next year save 1,000. Add a little bit more to your savings every year. That has a greater impact on the first 10% of your savings in your life than anything else that you will do. That means if I found a return that was 12% and I found another return that was just 8%. पर वही 8% वाले में हर साल थोड़ा सा बढ़ा के I increase my amount, investment amount, I will end up with much more money at the end of 10 years than in the first one that gave me 12% returns. Right? So the same thing applies in general. And this problem is exacerbated because there's too much math. People keep saying नहीं दीपक वहाँ थे तो आपने ज़्यादा सेव किया, तो ऑब्वियसली ज़्यादा पैसा बनाओगे. मैं कहा यार 100 रुपये ज़्यादा अगर सेव करूँगा तो मुझे तो पता ही नहीं चलेगा. I will have spent that money somewhere. I would go to a Starbucks, I'll buy some coffee, and that coffee is 400 or 500. I don't care. I'm buying it. So the money just gets spent, right? Instead of me spending it, I'm just investing it a little bit before, and then my returns are much greater. So it takes away the mind from. You should take the mind away from returns to I need this much money. So if I need 5 crores, I'm going to go and try and get there in 30 years. वो 5 crore ही चाहिए मेरे को. I don't want you to come back to me after 30 years and say आपने करोड़ के शेयर खरीदे होते 1981 में तो आपके पास 200 करोड़ होते. यार कितने लोगों के पास हैं? This one, I'm sorry I'm dragging this, but there's a kahani.
No, but yeah, it makes sense.
Yes, there's a kahani of this interviewer who goes to this guy who's smoking and says कि आप स्मोक कर रहे हो, कितना स्मोक करते हो आप? मतलब 4 सिगरेट पर डे. 4 सिगरेट पर डे आप कितने साल से स्मोक कर रहे हो? 30 साल से. तो 4 सिगरेट पर डे का प्राइस है 18 रुपया. ये वो ये आपने अगर ये पैसे स्मोक नहीं किया होता, अगर आपने पैसे इन्वेस्ट किए होते तो आपके पास होता आज एक फरारी. तो कहता है वो स्मोकिंग ख़त्म करके कहता है कि देखो स्मोकिंग ठीक नहीं है, पर मैं आपसे ये पूछता हूँ आप स्मोक करते हो? तो कहता है इंटरव्यू कहता नहीं आपकी कहाँ है फरारी? तो द पॉइंट इज हम लोग ज्ञान तो दे सकते हैं, एंड में वो करते नहीं है. मैं लोगों को बोलता हूँ डाइवर्सिफाई करो. मेरे खुद का पोर्टफोलियो में सिर्फ कैपिटल माइंड ही है, अगर मेरे खुद के कंपनी के शेयर्स हैं. सो समटाइम्स you have to when you tell something, you have to give the architecture around it. But every rule has a reason to break it, and everybody is different. So I think personal finance is actually personal. तो जो ज्ञानबाजी चलती है जी सबको ये करना चाहिए, वो नहीं करना चाहिए सबको. जो चीज़ आप किसी को भी बोल रहे हो कि सबको यही करना चाहिए, आई थिंक मोस्टली वो गलत होता है. एंड दैट इज द ओनली थिंग. अदर देन ऑफ कोर्स डोंट किल पीपल, डोंट those broad rules.
That stuff is one thing, but when it comes to money, I think there's no like one size fits all for sure.
Sadly there isn't. If there was, we'd all be saying the same thing.
So thank you so much, sir. That was a wonderful conversation, and I personally learned so much, and I hope that you had a really great time. And just one last thing, if you have any parting words for our audience.
My overall thought process is don't complicate your investment life. Remember that you can only think of it so much. So you save your money, you put your money into something, keep it squirreled away, whatever. But once you've reached a point where your goals are in sight, do have a plan to spend that money. It's just money's idea is to be spent. You should not try to leave money for future generations. They will earn their own money.
Investment in the securities market is subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.